My name is Aditya Chauhan, and I work with the organization development vertical at Arthan. We are a social enterprise working for creating human capital solutions in the social impact ecosystem. At the organization development vertical, we leverage our skills to make organizations more effective, productive, and happier. Personally speaking, I come in with almost 4 years of experience in OD roles. I have a background in psychology, and before my OD stint, I used to be a professional cricketer. Maybe that is the reason why I intended to start this topic with sports. But a bigger reason is that I feel like there are a lot of parallels between sports and life. It gives me great pleasure to commence this series on organization development called OD Live. In this series, we will have in depth conversations about various challenges within organizations and how to tackle them. And today, we explore the link between managers, especially first time managers, and mental health and well being of employees. So being a manager is like conducting an orchestra in a thunderstorm. On good days, your team harmonizes perfectly, each player hitting their notes with precision, creating a symphony of success. But on the challenging days, you're juggling faulty instruments, discordant sounds, and unexpected downpours, all while trying to keep it all together. Balancing vision and execution, inspiring passion while resolving conflicts, and celebrating victories amid setbacks. That is the beautiful, chaotic dance of management. Today, I'm joined in this conversation by none other than Nandita Krishan, who heads the OD vertical at Arthan. Nandita is a postgraduate from Symbiosis Pune, a podcaster and influencer. Nandita has worked across geographies and industries like IT, banking and financial services, health and wellness with companies like ABC Consultants, HDFC, and Snap Fitness. She was heading OD consulting and facilitation for Marching Sheep, a boutique HR consulting working in the space of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, before she joined Arthan to build organizations in social impact sector. Nandita is a diversity and inclusion expert and conducts awareness sessions on bias, allyship, and other inclusion strategies for organizations. She facilitates sessions around managerial and leadership development, preparing leaders to lead high performing teams, and communicating effectively to build psychologically safe teams. She is a subject matter expert in progressive HR policies and practices and has a very strong understanding of HR legislatures across several countries and key HR verticals like compliances, strategic planning, policy formulation, employee engagement, people management, and the entire employee lifecycle management. Nandita is a thought leader, and her opinions on varied topics around leadership essentials, market insights, and HR have been published by leading publications. She's a frequent speaker and a panelist at various universities, and for her recent engagement with the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, Nandita has been accorded with an honorary doctorate for her contribution as an industry expert on essential leadership skills in the digital era. A certified NLP practitioner, she strongly believes in the quote, "The grass is always green on the side where you water it." Therefore, she believes in continuous learning and growth for herself and for those around her. So, Nandita, great to have you here as always. Firstly, how are you feeling?
Thanks, Aditya. Wow, you made it sound like a autobiography right now. But yeah, I think it's feeling great. I am hello everyone, good evening. And I and Aditya today are going to probably take you through some of our learnings and experiences which we have gained in working with organizations and helping them develop better people practices. So really glad to be here to be able to share knowledge and help better workplaces.
Great, great. Lovely, lovely to have you here, Nandita. Lovely to uh, have this programs for our participants and for our viewers. So I'll begin with a few statistics. A study by Gallup found that 45% of managers report experiencing a lot of stress in their jobs, significantly higher than 30% of non-managerial employees. The same study also quotes that managers account for at least 70% of the variance in employee engagement scores, directly influencing their stress levels and job satisfaction. Research by the American Psychological Association indicates that employees with supportive managers are 31% more likely to stay with their company and report higher levels of well being. According to Harvard Business Review, managers are at a higher risk of burnout, with nearly 60% reporting significant stress and anxiety due to their roles. Now, this data paints a picture wherein not just the manager's employees, but also the manager themselves have a bearing on their mental health and well being. And we know that the role of a manager is not exactly a bed of roses. As a manager, one has to grapple with a variety of things, especially when it comes to first time managers. Because suddenly you find yourself in a people management position where there are a host of diversities that one has to deal with in terms of skills, emotional needs, working styles, personalities, and so forth. So, Nandita, in your experience, what are some things that first time managers probably get wrong? What are some mistakes that they make? And how does that relate with mental well being?
Yeah. So, great. On that, I would want to start with saying, it is not easy to be a manager. While most of us every day want to become a people manager at some point of time in our careers, it is a very difficult job, and it involves a lot of patience, a lot of empathy, collaboration. Of course, trust kicks in, and most of all, active listening. So, first time managers or people who move into a managerial role for the first time often face numerous challenges because, while most of us build experience and technical skills by learning on the job, it is the softer nuances of managing people that we lose focus on. For example, a lack of communication, which could mean assuming that your team understands the expectations and goals without explicit communication on the same. So, without setting it out there, you expect the team to know everything. Another very common challenge, which I think first time managers face, is micromanagement. We often struggle when we move into a new managerial role in delegating tasks, fearing that maybe the team will not perform well, live up to the standards of our own set expectations, or we micromanage every small detail while delegating tasks. Many first time managers also avoid difficult conversations for the same fear, the fear of unknown, right? You don't know whether you will be able to find the right solution, or you might end up hurting someone's feelings, or simply because they don't know how to address a conflict. Overcommitting is also a challenge which many managers face, including me. So every time I move to a new role, I am so driven with the desire to prove myself that I often overcommit and then stretch and work beyond my work timings to deliver, which is not very healthy thing to do. Also, I think when you start working with a new team, building relationships of trust and respect is another challenge that acts as a barrier to building great teams. Since we are still getting to know each other, whom to trust and how much to trust is always a concern. So you see, Aditya, there are many reasons why first which act as a challenge for first time managers, or why first time managers would not probably be doing as well as they think they would. And when you have so many things that you're trying to constantly overcome and prove, you're bound to make mistakes. We are all humans. And that forms a vicious cycle then. Because these mistakes then play on your mind, making you feel not good enough as a manager, which then results in self doubt and anxiety, causing stress and burnout. And eventually, repeated behaviors like these cause emotional exhaustion. So, the key, according to me, what I have found out to not fall in this cycle is to trust yourself and your team and communicate clearly. One of the models which we often talk about in our managerial development program is the expectations, observations, assessment, and consequences model, for short EOAC. So by using tools like these, first time managers can ensure that there are no gaps in communication while setting expectation, and a fact-based feedback conversation takes place, leaving less room for being misunderstood. So the fear of unknown, I might hurt, it takes care of that as well. Another important tool, I think, which managers can use to build trust is using Johari window and creating open spaces for conversations which go beyond work deliverables. Now, for the benefit of all of us here who might not know what is a Johari window, and if all of you do know, excellent, make use of it, implement it. So the Johari window is a communication model which was developed by two psychologists, Joseph Luft and Harry Ingham. So Joe and Harry come together to form the Johari window, and it is usually used to help people better understand their relationships with themselves and then with others. So it is a self-discovery model and based on two things. One, to acquire the trust of others by revealing your information to them. And two, learning about yourself through feedback from others. It's a give and take model on communication.
Wow, that's really comprehensive, and I was fascinated how the Johari window is actually the amalgamation of Joseph and Harry, because it sounds
Yeah.
like it's a beautiful embroidery painting from art form from Rajasthan, but okay, it's Joseph and Harry coming together to provide us with this effective model. So I think, Nandita, we have also personally in our conversations and also through these conversations have acknowledged numerous times that human beings are extremely diverse and complex in their own ways, right? So, as a manager and especially a first-time manager, how does one handle the emotional diversity of team members?
This is a very interesting question. Um, with a word that I think every person should be aware of and accept. It is not just for managers to talk about emotional diversity, but for every individual in their team. But before we discuss how to handle it, let's understand what emotional diversity actually is. So, emotional diversity or emo diversity means the wide range of feelings, reactions, and emotional needs that each team member brings to the workplace. This means how each one of your team member responds in similar situations, like situations, will always vary, and that is emotional diversity. And as a manager, it is extremely important to acknowledge and accept this diversity, right? So it simply says, in simpler words, it means that you accept the fact that each of your team member comes with a different emotional need, and therefore one size does not fit all. As a manager, I think to handle such diverse emotional needs is possible only with strong emotional intelligence. This means, again, being aware of your own emotions, your trigger points, and how they affect your behavior and decision making. When you do this, that's becoming more self-aware. So when you do this is when you will be able to create open spaces through transparent communication, listening intently, actively being involved in the actual situation of your team members. I think another factor to keep in mind while we talk about emotional diversity is to be agile and adaptable while addressing the emotional health and mental well-being needs. Like I said earlier, one size does not fit all. So you need to tailor make your management and leadership style. So understand how you can support your individual team members and yet motivate them to bring their best and unique selves to work every day. That is addressing emotional diversity.
Okay, that's very interesting, and I think your answer also illustrates the challenges and very real emotional challenges that come as a part of being a manager, especially a first-time manager, which kind of begs the question, because
Hmm.
there's so much talk about all of this, that
Hmm.
is there an ideal manager? Is there a notion of an ideal manager? Oh, please shed more light on that. We'd love to know that.
Um, to my mind, there is no such thing as an ideal manager. There are good managers and the not so good managers. So the concept of an ideal manager, I think, is more of an aspirational benchmark than a concrete reality, given the diverse needs, preferences, circumstances, culture in different work environments, right? So to me, as I see it, each one of us is an ideal manager in some form or the other. So there can not be any specific definition of an ideal manager. Evolving times, I think, will need different skill sets to become ideal. And an ideal manager will differ from industry to industry, from geography to geography, teams, culture. It all will bring out a different aspect of a manager. So while every manager strives for perfection or ideal, like I said, even I do, it's important for us to recognize that perfection is unattainable actually because you're constantly evolving and growing. And every manager will have unique strengths and areas for improvement. I think the key is to continuously self improve yourself, seek feedback, and become adaptable to the needs of the team and organization. I think I'll sum it up. Maybe I've just been all over the place. So, in conclusion, while there may not be a universally ideal manager, striving to continuously develop competencies and behaviors to enhance your individual effectiveness as manager and the ability to lead a successful, motivated, and cohesive team is what matters. It's the intent to become one.
That is oddly satisfying to hear, because we can often get lost in that pursuit of perfection, and
Yeah.
it's comforting to know that it's an ever evolving process, and it never stops. The learning never stops, but at the same time, absorbing also never stops. So, I mean, on that note, I think we spoke earlier about the managers, and of course, this topic is centered around that managers having a bearing on mental health and well-being of their teams. But we don't often speak about the manager themselves. So, how does a manager remain emotionally resilient in the face of ever evolving teams, balancing expectations and other work related pressures?
Hmm. Okay. Good one. So I think being emotionally resilient is both a need and a want, especially for surviving in VUCA 2.0. Now, VUCA means V stands for volatility, U stands for uncertainty, C stands for complexity, and A stands for ambiguity. And for any manager, together all the four of these could be challenging because going back to the previous reference, diversity in your teams. But is it unachievable? I don't think so. So some strategies I think which off my mind I can share, which can help managers and also which I follow to maintain resilience are firstly self-care and well-being. It all begins with you. So this is a combination of physical health, mindfulness, and taking the pause. So while regular exercise, balanced diet, sufficient sleep, the what we all do in today's time are foundational to resilience. Another interesting thing is that today managers and leaders look at digital well-being apps to ensure that they switch off from work and not cause burnout. You know, I once met a leader at a conference, and while we were trying to connect on LinkedIn, and I shared a request with her on the LinkedIn, she opened the LinkedIn and it didn't open. I said, maybe it's a network issue. She said, no, it isn't. I use a digital well-being app, which limits my usage on every networking app. So I think I'm done with my time for LinkedIn today, but I've got your request. The moment I open it tomorrow, I'm definitely going to accept it. That is self-care and well-being. Second, another strategy could be effective time management by understanding what needs to be delegated and how to prioritize tasks. I think managers really need to delegate tasks, use the Eisenhower matrix, the urgent important matrix, to beat anxiety related to work pressure and expectations. But also keep in mind that you do not just delegate a task. You also delegate the accountability and responsibility for completion of those tasks. So delegation and time management. Third is setting realistic expectations. Be clear about what you can do and what you cannot do. We are humans too. So be clear on this communication, set your boundaries with your team and also with your senior management. You know, it is for a longest time, I always thought, oh, how can I say no to work? Being a leader, it is expected of me, but it isn't, you know. It is okay to say you cannot do this and you're feeling overwhelmed. Like I said, even managers are humans and can only work up to a certain level and have a certain bandwidth. Fourth, open communication channels. Many always maintain open lines of communication with your team to address issues promptly and to prevent them from escalating. Be sure that there is a continuous and constant communication happening. That doesn't mean that even after work you are, chatting up with your team members. No, draw your boundaries, but make sure your team knows you have their back and you know that your team has your back. And fifthly, limit multitasking, and for lack of a better word, a more complex word, decompression time. So always remember that you cannot do everything at the same time. Focus on one task at a time to reduce any cognitive overload and increase your efficiency. It also helps set aside time at the end of the day to unwind and transition from work to personal life. All of these together, I think, can definitely help you become more resilient as a manager.
I think it's very interesting how you suggested a lot of different kinds of ways, personally, professionally, within teams, outside of teams, that go into making one forging that kind of resilience emotionally. So, I mean, borrowed from that question, then, how do managers build happier teams? Is there a is there a secret recipe, or is there a different recipe for every human for every team? Would love to know more about that.
I wish there was a secret recipe, Aditya, and I would love to get my hands on that recipe then. I'm currently conducting leadership workshops for an organization. And in one of our modules last week or last week, we were talking about building high performing teams. And while I was asking them, what does a high performing team look like to the participants? One of the participants said, why do we need to look at performance as a parameter? And why not look at happiness as a parameter? Why build high performing teams and not happier teams? And this question reminded me of that conversation that I had with that participant. We eventually renamed it, the entire module, to team management and building happier teams. So I think building happier teams is a multifaceted process. It requires a blend of universal principles, but with personalized approaches. And the most important aspect of happier teams is mutual respect and trust. So encouraging a culture of gratitude where team members express appreciation for each other. Of course, you will have the formal recognition programs being implemented at the organization level, but when at a peer level, your team members appreciate you for the work you're doing or for collaborating or for being there for them, it does have a different impact, right? Many organizations today, I think, are also mindful of conducting workshops to acknowledge and respect the cultural differences and diverse backgrounds by encouraging something that we call as cultural sensitivity. A very common myth, again, and I've heard it a lot of times, is that happier teams do not have arguments or misunderstandings or disagreements. Instead, I would say that where there is diversity of thought, when you're working with unique individuals, disagreements are unavoidable. Conflict is bound to happen. Teams which accept these disagreements and differences of opinion are actually the ones which brainstorm, ideate, and thereby create a thriving and happier workplace. What again, however, needs to be highlighted here is the fact that even in disagreements, like I said, it is based on the foundation of mutual respect and trust. So even in disagreements, be respectful to each other's opinion. That is what is actually needed to maybe build a happier team. And I'm sure this is not exhaustive. Every organization and every situation will have a different answer to this, but of my mind, this is what comes.
And I think that's a fascinating insight, and also like a very crucial insight. I'm sure all the serial disagreeers would be very happy to hear that.
Uh,
That yes, it's healthy to disagree. I completely agree. It's healthy to disagree, so long and so far as it is done in a respectful manner. Absolutely bang on. So I mean, in the last 4 years, especially
hmm,
since COVID has hit, there has been a massive tectonic shift in terms of remote work. Right?
hmm.
Um, Working styles have changed, working culture has changed, and so with such a shift, how does one navigate team management in a virtual setting? Because I'm sure that a lot of managers do face this emerging challenge, and I'm sure that this is a challenge that is only going to grow more in the future. So how does one navigate team management in a virtual setting?
Hmm. So I think this is something which has been a blessing in disguise from COVID. While earlier the work culture was more on being in office, I think today a hybrid work culture or remote work does not raise eyebrows anymore, at least from managers and leaders. But navigating team management in a virtual setting it involves a lot of key strategies to maintain productivity, to ensure communication and team cohesion. So at Arthan, I mean, of course, you're aware of it. We have a hybrid work model, and our teams alternate and work for 3 days from office and 2 days from home. I can borrow from what we do at Arthan and share some practices which have been handy for us in managing remote teams. So, firstly, we maintain continuous communication through multiple channels like email, WhatsApp, phone call, Slack, Signal. All these multiple channels of communication have ensured that there is no miscommunication or disconnect, even if I am working from office and my team is working remotely, or vice versa. Different types of communication, like emails for formal, video meetings for meetings, Slack, WhatsApp, or Signal for instant messages, they have helped communication flow become more seamless for us. Secondly, we are an organization which is built very strongly on the grounds of regular check-ins and scheduled one-on-ones, which helps us in getting aligned work-wise and also helps us be more organized as a team, right? It helps build collaboration, and with on these one-on-ones, when personalized feedback is offered, it is more supportive if you look at it on a holistic way. Thirdly, we ensure that we make optimal use of technology. So we use AI tools for taking meeting notes. We have Google Calendars to mark leaves and send meeting invites to the extent of finding a suitable time. We just put in the email ID and we are able to see the schedule and find a suitable time. We also use CRM softwares like Zoho, which make sure that there is transparency of work being done and lags get highlighted. So we are, like I said, making optimal use of technology to make sure we are hands-on wherever we are working from. Fourthly, we support flexibility and work-life balance by acknowledging and encouraging people to take time off, even in a virtual or hybrid work setup. If employees are not well and they request for remote work or work from home, because it's just easier, right? We persuade them to take an off and rest it out rather than build more anxiety around, oh, I need to finish this. And last but not the least, we monitor team well-being by focusing on results and not hours. So by giving the team members the autonomy to manage their tasks and time effectively, we also emphasize the importance of achieving results rather than monitoring the number of hours worked. Because in a remote setup, unfortunately, many organizations link productivity to the number of hours you were made available. In fact, there was a time in between when organizations used to say, oh yeah, you can work remotely. Just make sure you're available for a team call from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So we focus on achieving results rather than making sure our employees are available from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. As long as work gets done, it's all okay. So by implementing these strategies, we are able to navigate the challenges of remote work and foster a more productive, engaged team environment. But managing a remote team successfully, I think, requires a blend of, like I said in the beginning, effective communication, setting clear expectations, of course, technological support, which is very easily available post-COVID, and a focus on team culture and well-being. That is what you should not lose grip on. It's not easy to manage remote teams, which is why also these are solutions for which we use at Arthan, right? It is not important that these solutions work for other organizations too. I think every organization needs to figure out their solutions and find out their way of building a culture of happier teams, not high performance teams, but happier teams, and a culture of accountability and responsibility with it.
If do you think it's practical to separate the personal from the professional, and if like the lines, if in reality the lines are blurred and one aspect seeps into the other, how can an employee and especially a manager navigate through that?
Um, okay. So it is an it is something which has always been an expectation. And everybody used to say it earlier, when you come to office, leave your personal baggage at home. And when you go back to home, please leave your office work outside the house, right? But I think the separation of personal and professional lives is often an ideal rather than a practical reality. We all wish that happened, but it cannot happen. In the modern work environment, the lines between personal and professional spheres frequently blur, and managing this overlap is essential for not just the managers, but even for employees. But for this, we need to start with acknowledging the reality, and that is critical. This means acknowledging that complete separation of personal and professional lives is not feasible. So, why even think of something that cannot happen? Instead, we should aim for integration, where both aspects of our personal and professional lives can coexist and support each other. People who say that they are able to compartmentalize this, um, wow, because I don't think that is possible. And that's something that we've seen. Our employees are a subunit of the society, and the society exists because of our employees. It cannot be separated. Instead, let's aim for integration, a more practical approach to it. I think as managers, it is very important in this to lead by example and model a healthy behavior by setting clear boundaries for yourself first and prioritizing self care. As managers, it is upon us as to what type of culture we want to build for our teams. Hence, the need to first navigate through these blurred lines ourselves is more important when we say find solutions for the team. And this could mean taking small steps, like asking for help and not trying to do everything alone. Or sometimes something that I do every day, I make my task list, I plan my days accordingly. This helps me focus on urgent and important tasks and not overcommit myself, right? Another very important tool that can help course correct is to regularly pause and reflect on your work. Pause and reflect on how work life balance is going at regular intervals. Take that off. Don't think, oh, it's a hybrid work environment. It's okay. I'm working from home. That's my off. It is not your off. Trust me, it isn't. So before you check in with your team, I would suggest do a check in with yourself as a manager. What is the type of example you're setting? And while completely separating your personal and professional life is often impractical, managing the overlap effectively, I think it's very crucial for maintaining well being and productivity. So, foster open communication, ask for help, set clear boundaries, don't work beyond a time which you would not want your team to work, right? Leverage support systems, promote a culture of well-being. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm feeling under the weather. You know what, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling stressed. Can I take 2 hours off? Both managers and employees can navigate the complexities of blurred lines by doing these, I think, and a more balanced and supportive work environment can be created. You can't do it alone. You need to do it with your team.
Great, great. I'm happy you mentioned how you go about it, because my next question is directed at you, which is, what do you do to take care of your mental health? What do you do to unwind? What do you do to relax? What do you do to sort of de-stress?
Uh-oh. Okay. Um, so when you're a workaholic like me, it is never easy to unwind and take a downtime. I'm being brutally honest over here. But I have started to consciously draw my boundary over the weekend and days off to ensure that I do not check my emails and start work. I intend to start using digital well-being on my phone ASAP. I also make sure that my team members leave office on time, do not work overtime. It doesn't help, right? Also, if I find any of my team members working on a weekend or sending emails on a day off, I call them up and ask them not to, because clearly I'm not working on the weekend. So even if you're working on the weekend, it's not going to be helpful, right? But on a serious note, I make them understand that the sense of urgency for work needs to exist only during official working hours and not on weekends. I firmly believe that it is never too late, Aditya, to prioritize yourself and finding ways to take care of your mental health. Whenever I am stressed, I go out for a walk and listen to music, which really helps me to stay calm in stressful situations. find solutions that I'm not otherwise able to find in a closed environment. However, these are my coping mechanisms to de-stress and unwind myself. I think everyone's preferences and needs are different. So it's important to actually explore and find time for what works best for you personally, and then address the mental health needs rather than a cut copy paste. Some people find peace in isolation, while others de stress by working out. Some might just want to go out with their friends or watch a movie. Figure out what works best for you and then apply it whenever you feel the need. I think as long as you have your secret to finding happiness and peace or de stress, it doesn't matter what you choose, right? Nobody's judging.
That's fantastic. I The way I de-stress is usually through music, so I just like blast music in my earphones. I can't live without music, and also ice cream. So what I've done is that I've blended the two, and with the Naturals ice cream parlor that's just beside our office, I plug in my music and I go and have a Sitafal ice cream or a tender coconut ice cream. But no, that's great insight, Nandita. Thank you so much for such an insightful conversation. Thank you so much for letting us in into your world and also into your approach. And I'm sure these are very valuable tips for managers of all ages and backgrounds, but especially first-time managers.
Okay, there's a question in chat box by Sumedha. Any quick tips of how to manage an introvert employee?
Hi, Sumedha. Um, Sorry, what organization are you from? You can please feel free to unmute yourself. If not,
Hi, Nandita. This is Sumedha from class.
hi, Sumedha. So I think when we look at introvert employees, something that always works is having a buddy system in place. Help them settle into your organization and your team by assigning a buddy to them. And when you're assigning a buddy, always make sure that the person you're assigning himself or herself is not an introvert, else there will be no conversations that happen. But yes, having a buddy system or checking in with them regularly. Also, what I spoke about, the Johari window model, I think when you apply it in person, it makes a lot of difference, because when you share knowledge about information about yourself and show it as an act of trust, right? That you trust the other person, which is why you're comfortable in that environment to share. It always leads to further conversation from the other side also.
Just my 2 cents on this is because I think I can juggle between both worlds. I feel like whenever we're dealing with someone who is an introvert, I think it's the degree of formality, the scope of a degree of formality between them and yourself is higher. And the way to probably bridge that gap and to create a more probably like lessen that degree of formality is to just give them that kind of space and sort of allow them to thrive, but also maybe, and this is a cheat code that I use, but probably speak about their interests, speak about things that they find interesting. I think that really helps. So yeah.
When a lot of work comes in any organization, quite often we see which employee can do what work better or what area of development might need to be worked on for particular employees. So as a manager, especially as a first time manager, when you have a lot of work coming in, let's say for the first 6 months, how do you sort of get to know which employee has what strengths and what areas of development, so that you're also optimizing your team efficiency and while also meeting the deadlines and quality of work? If there are any quick tips for that.
Sure. Thanks for asking that, Zaid. So I think for first time managers to get to know their teams is never an easy, and it is a little time consuming thing, right? So one of the tools which we use when we talk about work delegation is, for short, it is TPAM: task, person, assign, and monitor, right? So you look at the task that you want to assign, and then you look at the person, as in whom do you think you can assign it to. Now, when you select the person whom you want to delegate the task to, it is not just about skill set. It will also have to be about their bandwidth and whether they want to whether they feel comfortable in taking up the task or not, right? So when you're assigning the task, the person needs to have a combination of skills, availability, and comfort in doing that. And then you assign the task, explaining in detail what is expected outcome, what would be an ideal outcome, and what is going to be the way to achieve it. And then leave it with the person. And then you do a regular monitoring to it. Now, when you do regular monitoring, Zaid, that is where it kicks in whether the person is an ideal person to do it or not, because that is when you will realize that maybe this task is not appropriate for this person. And that is when you course correct and then redo the entire TPAM thing and assign it to everybody. So you might not get it right in the first go, but continuous application of it would definitely help you get the right person to delegate the task to, or understand unique skills in your team better.
There's a question from Anurag. I'll just read it out.
Yeah.
It says how to handle emotional diversity and egoism in a team setup.
Okay. So when we talk of emotional diversity, and we've spoken about it, I know in our conversation earlier also, I think egoism is very different when it comes to emotional diversity. Ego is a behavior pattern. It is not a emotional way of emoting, Anuradha. You don't emote ego. It is there as a cognitive error that you have. So it is a behavior pattern. But to address egoism at workplace is also very difficult, because obviously you end up challenging somebody's mindset and behavior in a manner which is not okay with them, which in their minds, they are not doing anything wrong. So always remember, any behavioral change takes time to happen. Have a conversation, there is a communication model called behavior, outcome, feelings, and future, BOF, which means when you speak to the person, you say that, because of a certain behavior which they had in situation, the outcome was XYZ, which made the other person feel in a certain manner. And if they continue to do it, the future is going to be such. So it's the behavior, outcome, feelings, and future model, which makes the person reflect. But always remember, BOF needs to be on factual. So when you're talking about BOF, make sure you have your observations in place, and that is how you go and talk to them about. Keep the conversation calm, keep it open. Don't go with a mindset that, oh, this needs to be addressed. And be open to listening to their point of view also, because that plays a very critical role when you're trying to come to a common point. So when you apply BOF, you automatically make the other person reflect and think, if they were in this situation, what would they have felt or done? Because whenever you talk of behavior like ego, feelings play a very critical part in that, right? So applying this will be helpful, but happy to connect and understand this a little more deeper and give you a more tailor-made solution for this.
What does it take to accommodate the working styles of a diverse group of people? This sentence on best practices of feedback sharing and communicating and navigating work in a virtual setting.
So I think I'm going to only pick up the first part, Purnima, which is on work styles, because we've spoken at length about virtual settings and team management, and also on giving feedback. The EOEC model was on giving feedback and not leading to misunderstandings. So I'll pick up the first part where you accommodate different work styles. So when you're accommodating different work styles, something that I use personally is I'm very open about sharing my work style first and say, you know what, these are some of my non-negotiables when I'm working. What are your non-negotiables? To make sure that it is a win-win and it does not come across as, oh, I work like this, it's my way or the highway. It should never be like that as managers. So understand your negotiables and non-negotiables. What is it that is okay if your team doesn't do it? What is it that is absolutely not okay if your team doesn't do it? And at the same time, ask them what is their negotiable and non-negotiable. That ways you'll make sure that neither do you step on line with them and neither do they step on the line with you, right? For example, for me, a non-negotiable is quick response time to emails, right? I make it very clearly open to my team saying, or people that I collaborate with on different projects saying, please revert within 24 hours. If you don't, it makes me think that this was not urgent for you while this was urgent for me, right? And similarly, if my team responds, sends an email to me, I would respond to it. So setting those type of clear boundaries and like I said, understanding what is important for the other person as well as for you will always create a common ground where you can, fuse both the work styles and build a more collaborative team.
Are there any tools and strategies for effective management, something that can be listed down? This is by Aparna Joshi, who's a pro bono consultant.
Effective management. So I'll tell you what, management is actually it's a very vast term. Now, if you're looking at effective people management, I think we've just spoken about it. If you're looking at effective time management, there is a lot about delegating, there is a lot about monitoring, there's a lot about giving constructive feedback that can be looked at. I personally feel I think leadership and managerial functions are often fused together, right? So as a leader, you might be an achiever, an inspirer, an enabler. But at the same time, when you club this with the managerial functions of planning, staffing, controlling, and monitoring, it all comes together as one person. So I think management is a very vast term, but understanding what is your management style, what is your leadership style, and then implementing things which, like I said earlier also, I think in my conversation to Aditya, tailor make your management style. So don't say that, oh, it works for Nandita, it might work for me. It works for Aditya or Purnima, it might work for me. It won't. You need to figure out what works for you and then set the clear boundaries. Understand within this work style, what is it that is absolutely critical for you to have, and what is it that you can do with even if it does not exist. I don't know if that answered actually management, because management is a little vast.
That's pretty clear, Nandita. Thanks for answering. Aditya, over to you for anything else. Yeah.
I think I'm sorry that I'm here in this shape and form. My internet gave up on me, so I'm here from cellular data. But I think we've covered a variety of subjects. We covered a host of different factors, host of different touch points on managers and the challenges and how they can deal with things and the tools that they can employ. Thank you so much, Nandita, for giving us your precious insights. I would just like to request all the participants and all our viewers and everyone who tuned in that if you require any kind of assistance, if you feel like there is anything that you can, any help or any kind of assistance that you would like to avail in terms of learning and development, capacity building, Purnima is going to share with you the email IDs. Please feel free to reach out to us. Please feel free to write to us. We would love to help you out. We would love to partner with your organization. We would love to deliver interventions. And yeah, I think we had a great session. And thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for patiently listening. It's not easy to listen to two people having a conversation for almost an hour. But thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your questions. And yeah, over to you, Purnima.
I think just 1 second, Purnima, I'll just add on to Aditya's ending and thank you note and say, don't be too harsh on yourself as managers. You guys are doing a brilliant job. You'll find out your ways. I found mine. I'm sure everybody can too. We are humans. Let's just be a little soft on ourselves also. Kind.
Thank you, Aditya. Thanks, Nandita, for curating such a wonderful session. The email IDs are in the chat box for those who would like to reach out to any of us. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining.